Sterile light glared. George stared at bills. Every single one was marked with aggressive red ink, a visual reminder of a deficit he could not bridge. He tapped his pen against the wood, the rhythmic clicking echoing in the quiet house. Numbers mocked him, a futile, endless sum. Numbers mocked him. Rent, bills, interest, paycheck, fell short. Pen snapped, dark blotch bloomed. Ink bled, silence pressed. He sank back, chair groaned, staring into the void. George stood up, his knees popping as the stiffness of a 10-hour hospital shift finally settled into his bones. He left the kitchen, the hum of the light fading behind him as he moved down the hallway. The living room was dim. Vern sat on the edge of the sofa, a calculator balanced on her lap. Her brow was deeply furrowed, her eyes darting across the screen as she tallied expenses. Rigid posture hid her tremors. She ignored him. On the rug nearby, their two daughters sat in a tight circle, playing with wooden blocks. They were unnervingly quiet. Floorboards creaked. Girls froze, eyes wide. Doorway view. Family struggle. George collapsed onto the bed, staring at the ceiling as the house settled into a hollow, oppressive silence. Sleep a lost shore, mind ablaze. Phone buzzed. Cold glass met his touch. The screen flared to life, casting a harsh blue glow that illuminated the dust motes dancing in the air. He scrolled, a dull, robotic motion, seeking solace. A stark graphic, a financial shift, held his gaze, thumb poised. His measured words, logic frayed his armor. A fragile spark bloomed. George's feet met cold floorboards. Harsh bulb-lit kitchen, Vern slumped, head in hands. He slid the phone to her. His voice quivered, words choked, pointing a shaky finger at the screen. Her gaze hardened, unsoftened, eyes dimmed. She pushed phone back. She turned, eyes lost in shadows. Silence fell. George froze. Phone a dying ember. He retreated, shadows swallowing him. Shadows clung to George at the table. Argument's ghosts lingered. Mind raced, seeking a path, not a guarantee. Dusty laptop, cold metal, avoided tasks, creaking hinges, ghostly reflection. Fingertips pulsed, screen flared white. A data storm engulfed him, a digital chaos. He sat perfectly still, the blue light washing over his face, as the reality of the task ahead finally settled in. He took a breath, reached out, and clicked the icon he had avoided for weeks, committing himself to the unknown. George's eyes scanned the glowing tab maze. Fingers danced, then struck keys. Cursor blinked. Fingers fumbled. Keys struck wrong. A frantic digital dance. Red error pulsed. Software defied him. He clicked help, but jargon blurred his eyes. Error code flashed. Digital chime echoed. He felt inadequacy. Jaw tight. He tapped. Locked out. Frozen screen. Trembling hands. Ignorance weighed him down. Chair scraped. He stared. Shoulders slumped. The screen cast a sterile, unforgiving light across his face. Every error code felt like a door slamming shut. He paused, resisting the old life's pull. Bills loomed. Quitting meant ruin. The alternative was to stay in this chair, to endure the sting of his own ignorance, and to force the machine to yield. He exhaled. Neck tension eased. Windows vanished. Glare vanished. Hands steadied. He traced each line, resisting the urge to leap ahead. Night deepened. Laptop glowed. George did not move. His eyes locked on the scrolling lines of data as they finally began to align. Logic's grip. Keystrokes measured. Silent house hummed. Eyes ached. Screen flashed. A crisp alert popped. He froze. Eyes narrowed. A tiny win logged. A meager sum, yet it was proof. A slow smile bloomed. Hope's quiet whisper. The house was deep in sleep, but the kitchen remained a hub of activity. George's gaze locked, analyzing the screen's every flicker. Laptop light cast sharp shadows. Then, a soft sound broke the stillness, a small footfall. Lila walked into the circle of light. She did not speak. She pulled a chair close to his side and climbed up, her gaze fixed on the scrolling data. She scribbled notes with her worn pencil, mimicking the movement. She watched his hands, then looked at her own, trying to replicate the cadence of his typing. His fingers paused, eyes flickered. He kept her near. George pushed the keyboard aside, clearing a space on the table. He was done with guessing. The trial and error phase had taught him the limitations of the platform, but now he needed a blueprint. He sketched the system's soul. He mapped out the inputs, the bottlenecks, and the triggers that led to the payouts he had witnessed. His pencil danced. Logic lines bloomed. Her pencil traced his thoughts. He retraced his failures. He built a framework, not a fight. The screen remained steady, the lines of his diagram reflecting the logic he had spent the last week perfecting. George kept his eyes on the data, his fingers resting lightly on the edge of the table. Then, the silence of the room was broken by a sharp, clear chime from the laptop. A small window popped up in the corner of the display. He leaned forward, his breath hitching in his throat. A shocking payout, far beyond prior dips. George did not move. He did not cheer. He simply stared at the figures, his mind racing to calculate the implications. He scanned his sketches, then the screen, confirming the system's perfect match. He watched the screen, his path unfolding. The morning sun had not yet touched the windows when George clicked the power button. He was awake before the alarm. He moved with quiet, calculated grace. Desk beckoned, dark TV mirrored empty room. He had unplugged it the night before, removing the primary source of noise that usually filled their evenings. Empty house. George sat rigid, eyes glued to data. Dawn broke. He still worked, focus unbroken. Girls tiptoed out, sensing the shift. Sacred zone. George tapped keys. Vern stood in the doorway, her arms crossed tight against her chest. She had watched him for 3 days, the way he ignored the clock and the needs of the house to stare at that glowing screen. Her steps creaked. She stood behind him. She reached out and touched the edge of the desk, her fingers tapping a sharp, rhythmic warning. "George, look at me." He swiveled, eyes clouded. Vern leaned in. "Time lost, house ruined, same old chase. Don't gamble our last moments. You're drifting away." Room chilled. George stared, then back. George turned, hands steady, resuming his mapped tasks. Night's hush, keyboard song. Each night, a dull cycle. Input, analyze, adjust. No glory, no reward. He pushed past fatigue, focusing on tasks. Days bled into nights, a blur of charts and code. He watched the screen, waiting for the shift. On the 4th night, the graph line finally broke its horizontal stagnation, inching upward by a fraction of a percent. Numbers bloomed, fueled by his steady hand. The house remained quiet, but the air felt different. The crushing weight of the overdue bills began to lose its edge. The house was silent, save for the steady, rhythmic tap of keys. George worked with a mechanical precision, his focus entirely on the stream of data flowing across the monitor. He had stopped looking for the small wins. He was simply executing the system he had built, one step at a time. Then, the silence shattered. A chime pierced the room. A bright notification bloomed. George paused, his fingers hovering inches above the keyboard. He leaned in, squinting against the harsh white light. A sum that stole his breath. Digits stared, a month's pay vanished. Chair creaked, hands chilled. He sat still. George did not speak. His throat felt tight, the air in the room suddenly thin. He reached out, his fingers trembling slightly as he gripped the edges of the laptop. With a slow, deliberate motion, he pivoted the screen toward the other side of the table. Vern was still sitting there, her posture rigid, her eyes fixed on the dim light of the kitchen. She looked up, her expression guarded, prepared for another night of bad news or financial strain. She saw his face first, the pale, wide-eyed intensity that stopped her breath. Then, she looked at the screen. She leaned forward, her hands gripping the edge of the table until her knuckles turned white. She scanned the figures, her brow smoothed out, the deep lines of worry suddenly losing their anchor, the skepticism disintegrating. Vern scraped her chair, eyes glued to the screen, her finger tracing the lines of the charts. "How?" she whispered, the word barely audible. He loomed, pointing, voice steady. Map data, logic, and triggers for payouts. She picked up the mouse, her movements cautious at first, then gaining speed as she grasped the pattern. George planned, Vern did. Quiet focus. They moved with a newfound synchronization, passing the laptop back and forth to refine their approach. Data surged, clicks compounded, table hummed, new frequency. Daughters watched, still and silent. Layla gripped her pencil, watching parents navigate data. She did not scribble. She drew boxes and lines, mimicking the flowcharts she saw on the monitor. She watched. A silent, intense apprenticeship. The house felt alien, its energy hushed. Future's blueprint, calculation, review. Home pulsed with purpose, a family weaving systems together. Laptop closed, he stepped out. He gathered his extended family in the living room, the space crowded with faces he had known for years. He started to speak, outlining the system he had built, the logic behind the growth, and the shift in his life. Laughter rippled. A cousin waved it off as fantasy. George calmly opened his laptop. Graphs showed clear upward trends. Stillness fell, breath heavy, fan hummed. He watched them face his truth. Silence shattered, brother-in-law pointed. George showed the automation steps. He leaned in, scribbling notes. A sister joined, asking setup. George explained the system's logic. Chairs circled. Students absorbed George's prompts. Screens glowed, faces lit, building George's vision. Data dissolved their limits. Tasks merged. Learning closed, scaling beyond home. Network surged. A household seed bloomed into a vast, synchronized grid. Data surged. Systems self-optimized. Alert flashed. George upgraded the router. Bandwidth bloomed. Budgets vanished. Numbers surged, free from past scarcity. Vern gazed. New investments unlocked. Choices shifted from bills to ventures. Old worries vanished. Machine hummed. George watched. Horizon vast. The transformation was no longer confined to the screens. It had permeated the way they moved through their home. Lila's eyes traced metrics, spotting system anomalies. George saw her refine. Old fears shed, new selves bloom. They were builders now. Every action they took was calculated to reinforce the structure they had erected. Vern gathered the family for their weekly review, not to discuss expenses, but to allocate resources for new projects. Future plans bloomed, shedding past hesitations. Their reality, built on solid ground. House breathed, routine smoothed. Contented quiet graced the dinner table. George set his plate down. No one checked the clock. No one glanced toward the hallway to see if the mail had arrived. Harsh glare softened to warm glow. Sisters' voices, calm and low, shed childhood's tremor. Vern cleared dishes, a fluid grace, not bracing. Silence hummed, bills vanished. Years of tension dissolved, replaced by deep, resonant stability. George saw a revelation. Vern read calmly. Kids played. He gazed out, remembering nights spent staring. Days dwindled. He was a stranger. Space? A launch pad. Lila laughed. Books lined shelves, planning decades ahead. Files neat, time intentional. Fear fled, confidence bloomed. They commanded life, free to simply exist. George sat at his desk, the laptop screen casting a soft, steady light across the room. He was no longer looking for the next payout. He was looking for the next generation. He pulled out a leather-bound notebook and began to write, distilling the complex data into simple, actionable steps. He guarded his logic secrets for his daughters. He sketched systems, words simple for kids. Mind's framework, not wealth. His legacy. Files sorted, folders labeled, future bright. The cycle of uncertainty had been broken, and in its place, he was crafting a map for those who would follow. George watched Lila from the doorway. She was sitting at the table, a small calculator in her hand, mapping out a simple budget for her school savings. There was no hesitation in her movements, no darting eyes looking for a way out of a problem. She was building, not just surviving. He walked over and placed a hand on her shoulder, feeling the steady rhythm of her focus. Bill's glare burned red. That light was gone. The kitchen was quiet, filled with the soft hum of a home that knew its own direction. Never knew Dread's heavy mail. The cycle of fear had ended with him, and in its place, he had left them the tools to build whatever they chose. George stood in the center of the kitchen, the overhead light casting a warm, steady glow over the wooden table. Fingers traced grain, a pen's frantic beat echoed. No red notices, no demands. The laptop hummed. Solid wood chair, memories tight room. Planning maps the future's weight. He built strong, then laid fresh paper. Kitchen reborn, Future's dawn. Empty space birthed a legacy. Scarcity yielded to growth. George tapped the final key, watching the screen dim as the system finalized the last of the day's projections. Blue light gone, dawn's soft glow-filled kitchen. He pushed the laptop back, the sound of the device clicking against the wood echoing in the stillness. He sat, hands flat, table solid. Nightly frantic sums, now a calm hum. He stood up and walked to the window, watching the first light of dawn touch the trees outside. The house was silent, tension gone, kitchen calm, a quiet anchor. Morning gray, light off, work done. Hallway echoes, kitchen left behind.